today. I can see a few faces. First of all, thank you to all of you that have turned your cameras on. I think there's one, Rhonda, thank you. I appreciate that. If there are others, all I can see are 5 or 6 boxes. So if there are other people with cameras on, I can't see you and I apologize. So toward the end, I will stop sharing and hopefully we can see everyone at that point in time.
Doris, if I can interrupt.
Yes.
The only way that attendees can turn on their video is if they will accept the invitation that I send to promote them to panelists.
Oh, yes, I do remember. So promoting for everyone, promoting to panelists does not mean you are a panelist. Promoting to panelists simply means that you have the ability to turn your cameras on and I believe participate in the chat. Michelle, is that also correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I would love for everyone to be able to participate in the chat. This is, I didn't make this very interactive because I know a lot of people are not going to turn their cameras on and will be muted, but there is an opportunity as we go through this webinar to self-assess where you are on the DiSC chart. And I always like to ask everyone through chat where they are on the DiSC chart. So if you wouldn't mind saying yes to being a co-panelist, that would be fantastic. All right, I am going to go ahead and get started. And I don't know, Michelle, is that something you're able to do multiple times or?
Yes.
So when we get to the place where I want people to really participate, I will ask you to do that one more time and I'll make the announcement because I'm sure as people come on, they may be saying no to that. And in order to prompt them or encourage them to say yes, we'll do that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce myself. First of all, I am Doris Dunn and I have spent over 35 years in the corporate world, all of that in insurance. I spent many years with Farmers Insurance and then a small MGA here in the Nashville area and left a little over a year ago and launched my coaching business in August of last year, DunnWise Business Consulting, which is a business coaching company. And when I was at my last corporate gig, I was certified as a DiSC facilitator. And then when I launched my coaching business, I actually was recertified. So I could, and they have some new things at Wiley and Everything DiSC that makes it even more fun than the last corporate gig that I had. And so I am a certified DiSC facilitator. I am very passionate about DiSC. I think it's a fantastic tool. And it's, in fact, we'll just go ahead and move to the next slide because we're going to talk about some of these things. So what we're going to talk about today is DiSC versus some other assessments. So you may have heard about other types of assessments out there and you may be curious, what is the difference between DiSC and those other assessments? So we'll spend a few minutes on that. We're going to learn the basics of DiSC. We will also identify your style. So this is a self-assessment. And I'll probably mention this a couple of times, but the assessment takes about 20 minutes. It's not free, but it will dive a lot deeper. And we're going to get into the depth of what a profile looks like, what an assessment looks like versus what you're able to do here in today's workshop. Build better relationships. One of the most important things about DiSC is really not only learning about yourself, but build better relationships. So we're going to show you a little bit about that. And then I will show you a sample DiSC assessment, just so you have an idea if you do move forward and want to do an assessment with me or anyone else, what that assessment would look like and all the good stuff, all the meat that it includes in that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to play a short video.
When you think about your work and the things that really mean something to you, you probably think of the big moments. The promotion you got, or didn't, the setbacks, the big wins. And even though we tend to think of our work life in terms of these big moments, it's really a collection of small ones. The interruption that throws off your meeting, a harsh comment that lingers long after the other person has moved on. Small words of encouragement that turn your day around. Like most people, you might take these small interactions for granted. But the way you feel about them has more to do with your day-to-day happiness at work than almost anything, for a pretty simple reason. You're human. We're wired to care deeply about our interactions. Each one is an opportunity, no matter how subtle or short, to connect, relate, and engage with each other. They're often what makes the difference between a good day and a bad one. And those negative interactions, the ones that drain us or just keep us up at night, well, what they're often about is two people not seeing each other clearly. Sometimes we misread each other's intentions because we come from different starting places. Other times we get stuck thinking our way is the only way. But when we make the effort to really see the people around us, where they come from, what matters to them, what they struggle with, it can change the way we think about those interactions. And there's a simple model called DiSC that can help us take a clearer look at the needs and priorities of the people around us. It starts with 4 basic styles: D, I, S, and C. Take Ellen, who has a D, or dominant style. She's direct and outspoken, which is pretty common for people with a D style. She has a strong drive to achieve, so she's not afraid to make the tough calls or urge the team toward a goal. And when she has a clear vision of how to get there, she can become frustrated if things get bogged down in red tape or take longer than they should. Then there's Anthony, who, like others with the I, or influence style, is outgoing and enthusiastic. He thrives in a lively, fast-paced environment where people come together and collaborate. And because that sense of connection means so much to him, he can be left feeling discouraged and drained when it's missing from his work life. Oliver, like others who share his S or steadiness style, is patient and accommodating. He has a calm, supportive way about him that helps others feel welcome. And though his colleagues know he's dependable, they don't always get how invested he is in not letting them down, or how important it is for him to keep things on an even keel. Finally, there's Nadia, who has a C, or conscientiousness style. She's analytical and precise, and likes having personal space to dig deeply and logically into a topic. Like others with the C style, she puts a lot of pressure on herself to get things right. So even though she presents a calm face to the world, she gets stressed out when she doesn't have the time or stability to do her job properly. Now, of course, there's a lot more to people than their DiSC style. But what the DiSC model can do is help you take a fresh look at the people around you. And once you get where people are coming from, you can choose to engage in ways that are more productive and comfortable and fun. DiSC also helps you take a fresh look at those small moments, like the person who just really needs a break from all the heavy stuff in their life right now, or the person who didn't realize how harsh they sounded in that last meeting. Because when we really see people and they see us, something happens to those day-in, day-out moments. We notice how much they actually mean.
All right. So I really like that video. I think it's a great introduction to DiSC. And as I said, we're going to dive a little deeper into this. And one other thing I'll add, I've been doing this for about 4 years now, and I still learn things every day. And I still, when I try to assume where someone falls in the DiSC chart, it's not always that easy. But hopefully today we will at least have some beginning understanding of how it all works and how it all flows together. All right, so you may have heard about some of the other assessments that are out there, such as the Enneagram, the color personality chart, MBTI, the Big 5 personality traits. Those are all great assessments. The biggest difference between DiSC and the other assessments is DiSC really focuses on behaviors, whereas some of the other assessments are more psychologically based and personality profiles. and they're not quite as good for working together in a business environment. And it's also not very complicated. So there are, if you look at the DiSC, it's really behavioral interactions. It's 4 primary dimensions. It's simple and easy to understand. It's perfect for professional settings. It's very practical and lots of actionable insights. We're going to go over some of those. The workplace integration is very extensive, and there are even more aspects to it that I will get into. Very straightforward, highly adaptable, and as I said, improves communication, teamwork, and leadership. And I can send this chart out if anyone is interested in some of these other comparisons. I know there's a lot of words on here. I'm just going to let this sit there for just a minute, so you'll have an opportunity to look at it. And I realize I see a typo on there. I changed all the and words to ampersands, and I see understanding there under the Enneagram. Is now an ampersand. That should be understanding, not understanding.
Doris, if you want to send that to me, I can distribute it to all attendees.
Absolutely. I will do that. I will fix the typo, turn it into a PDF, and send that out to you. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
All right. The cornerstone principles of DiSC. The first one is that, and I also want to add, most of you will not have taken the assessment. I think I mentioned this briefly in the introduction, that the assessment takes about 20 minutes. There are a lot of questions, behavior-based questions. I should also mention there's more than one version of DiSC. This is everything DiSC. It's a Wiley brand. And so they will look at the chart a little differently than, I think there's extended DiSC, and there's another program out there that approaches the testing a little differently. With everything DiSC, the way that the questions are asked is more on a scale 1 through 5. So here's the situation. How would you react to this? Are you more likely or less likely in this situation? And if you are conflicted in your answers, if you answer a similar question in 2 different ways, the test will dive even deeper. It'll use some AI principles, dive even deeper to make sure that there is an understanding of who you are. So it's very accurate in terms of who you are and where you fall into the chart and what your primary styles are. But there are no wrong answers. That's the most important thing to understand with DiSC, is there are no wrong answers. It's just different behavior styles. And all of them are equally weighted. Doesn't mean that having a strong D style is better than having a strong S style. They're all equal. And everyone has a blend of all 4 styles. So you're never going to be just one thing. And you're going to see shading in a minute to show you that everyone is a little bit of a blend. You're going to be dominant in one area, but there's going to be a blend of the other styles as well. And other factors are going to influence your style, your life experiences, your education, your maturity. And while your DiSC profile probably won't move a lot in your lifetime, some of the other personality styles, those may change a little bit more over your lifetime. And your DiSC profile, if you take one right out of college, you're 23 years old, it may be different than when you take one at 40 or 50. As you have moved up in the workplace or in the corporate world, it may adjust a little bit. You may start out in one spot, maybe you're a little shyer, you're a little bit more introverted, and as you grow, you may move into some of the other styles. But the first step in DiSC is really understanding yourself better. So you take the assessment and you'll immediately get feedback on the type of behaviors where you're comfortable, some things that maybe stress you out a little bit. Step 2 is learning about other people's DiSC styles. If you're in a large corporate environment and the organization has said everyone is going to take the DiSC assessment, which is really an ideal situation, is everyone takes it. And this is not a secret. You don't keep your DiSC style to yourself. You share your DiSC style. In fact, a lot of people may already know your DiSC style based on certain behaviors that you have, or they can guess what your DiSC style is more likely to be. But there are organizations where you might get a green, red, blue, or yellow dot for your nameplate, or put it on the outside of your door, the style that you are. Because what helps, if you know exactly where someone else falls in the profile chart, that helps you better communicate with that person, maybe stretch into those other styles so you understand and do a better job of communicating and motivating that person. The third step is to build more effective relationships. You can do that whether someone has taken the assessment or not taken the assessment. The more you work with DiSC and the more you understand, you start to become able to read people. And the more that you can read someone, you understand where they fall and what style they're likely to be in. Now, you may get it slightly wrong, but you may understand if you're a very dominant D style and someone comes across as maybe patient and people-oriented and people-pleasing, they're very opposite from you, you understand that maybe you have to move away from your dominant style in order to be able to communicate and influence that other person. All right, let's dive into the DiSC model. So this is very high level DiSC model. So you heard some of this in the video. D is for dominance, and the folks that fall into that D style. And we really like to say that you have a style rather than you are a style. So we try to avoid, and I'll make that mistake all the time where I say, oh, I'm an I. No, I have the I influence, or I have the I style. So there's a little bit of a nuance in saying that because you aren't one thing. You might have that style, but you're not just one thing. So the D style is primarily direct, firm, strong-willed, forceful, and results-oriented. The I style is called influence. You're outgoing, you're enthusiastic, optimistic, very high-spirited, you're lively. The steadiness style, the S, is you're more even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, tactful. And the C style are conscientious, analytical, reserved, precise, private, and systematic. Now, as I said earlier, most of you, I assume, have not taken the DiSC assessment. And in order to understand yourself better, we're going to do a self-analysis. So we're going to try to figure out, and maybe that other slide, you already know exactly where you fit in with this chart. But what we're first going to do is try to read ourselves and see where we might fall. And this exercise is also very helpful when you're trying to read someone else. So the first thing that we do with the pie chart is we divide it into 4 halves, the top half, the bottom half, and then the right half and the left half. So the top half, bottom half. So the top half is going to be that fast-paced and outspoken person, usually an extrovert. You're active, fast-paced, assertive, dynamic, and bold. Or you might be more cautious and reflective, where you're going to be thoughtful, moderate-paced, calm, introverted, careful. I'm going to pause for just a moment to let you reflect on those words and think about where you might fall, top half or bottom half. Then we split the pie into a right half and a left half. So the left half is going to be questioning, logic-focused, objective, skeptical, challenging. Where the right half is more accepting, warm, people-focused, empathizing, receptive, and agreeable. And pausing there, I'm going to go back to the other one for a second. So if you think that you might be in the top half and the left half, you're very likely a D. Versus if you are the bottom half and the right half, you're very likely an S. So let's dive a little deeper into each one of these styles. Understand the D style. Your priorities, if you fall in that quadrant, your priorities are going to be displaying drive, taking action, challenging self and others. You're very motivated by power and authority, competition, winning, success. I'm sure you imagine a lot of CEOs out there fall under that D category. And you probably even can think of some folks that you've seen on television. So that authoritarian type of personality. Your fears are going to be loss of control or being taken advantage of, vulnerability. I often talk about vulnerability being an asset, but for the Ds, that's scary. That's one of your fears, is being vulnerable. So that might be one of the harder ones to stretch away from and to show your vulnerability if you're trying to communicate with somebody outside of the D style. You will notice self-confidence, directness, forcefulness, risk-taking. And your limitations might be a lack of concern for others, impatience, insensitivity. So it's really hard for you to show empathy, that you care more about you and your company and maybe your family. That's going to be your priority, but showing concern for others, that could be a limitation for you. The I style, your priorities are providing encouragement, taking action, fostering collaboration. You're motivated by social recognition, group activities, friendly relationships. Your fears are social rejection, disapproval, loss of influence, or being ignored. You don't want to be that kid in the playground that nobody wants to play with. You will notice charm, enthusiasm, sociability, optimism, talkativeness. So sometimes the talkativeness could be seen as negative by other people. Your limitations could be impulsiveness. You might be disorganized. You could have a lack of follow through. And if you haven't guessed it by now, I fall in the I category. In fact, I am an ID. And so I'm almost to the D, and there were times in my career where I was on the other side of the line and I was closer to a D than an I. These days, I'm more of an I. Your S category. So those that fall in the S style, your priorities are giving support, achieving reliability, enjoying collaboration. If you notice the I and the S, they both have collaboration, but the S is going to be more on the introverted, quiet side of that collaboration, where the I is going to be more of that outgoing, yay, go team type of style. You're motivated by stable environments, sincere appreciation, cooperation, and opportunities to help. You're absolutely a people person. You want everyone to get along. Your fears are understand that loss of stability, change, loss of harmony, offending others. Probably Facebook might not be a good place for you to go if you're an S. You will notice patience, team player, calm approach, a good listener, and humility. And your limitations might be overly accommodating. You don't want to be the doormat that people step on. Tendency to avoid change and indecisiveness. And finally, the C style. Your priorities are ensuring objectivity, achieving reliability, and challenging assumptions. You might be a perfectionist. It might take you a little longer to get things done because of your tendency to be a perfectionist. You want it to be right. You want to know all the information before you make decisions. You're motivated by opportunities to use that expertise or gain knowledge. You have a huge attention to detail and quality. Your fears are going to be criticism, slipshod methods. Again, that goes back to that perfectionism, and being wrong. You have a tendency to always want to be right. You will notice precision, analysis, skepticism, reserve, and quiet in a C style. And your limitations might be that you're overcritical. You have a tendency to overanalyze, and you might isolate yourself. You may want to be in a room all by yourself to get it done, get all that research, do all that work so that you can put out a perfect product. I mentioned earlier that you're a blend of all the styles. So your style, there are 4 styles and there are 12 priorities. So you'll notice on here in this sample that here is someone and they have a dot. We're going to talk about the dot in a second, but the dot is primarily, that's going to be where you fall. Your strong sense of self is going to be where that dot placement is. But you'll notice this person has shadowings in all 4 quadrants. So they're definitely a strong S, but they have a lot of C in them as well. A little bit, or a lot of S in them. They have a little bit of C, a little bit of D, but the surprise for this person is they are still very results oriented. So your priorities, you're going to have anywhere from 3 to 5 priorities. There again is no wrong number, whether it's 3, 4, or 5. This person happens to have 4 priorities: enthusiasm, collaboration, support, and results. The shading represents your comfort zone. We talked about the dot. So your inclination is going to be a slight inclination versus moderate versus strong. So we'll start with the strong. If you're a very strong I, you might have more of a challenge to try to see the other, to communicate to those other priorities or styles. If you have a slight inclination, your shadowing is probably going to be a lot larger, and you may be more able to understand and empathize with the other styles and communicate with those other styles. And once you take that DiSC profile, you'll have a better understanding of how to do that. All right, so now that we've gone through all of that, and I'm hoping that, Michelle, if you can maybe turn on that opportunity to be a panelist. And again, being a panelist does not mean that we're going to ask you to share or say anything. Being a panelist just gives you the opportunity to share in the chat. And I would love to see all of you, now that you've had this very quick self-assessment in about 15 minutes, where you think you fall. What is your DiSC style? And Michelle, I cannot see the chat right now. Oh, there's the chat. Okay. So if you can, please put in your, I see 2 people so far. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Rhonda.
Yeah, give them a couple minutes because I'm still sending out the invitations. Okay.
Carolyn. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Kelly. Hi, Regina. I know Regina. All right, it looks like we're fairly evenly. I know only a few people have responded so far. One of the things that you'll find is that in most organizations, and we'll say medium to large organizations, if the hiring was done well, you will find, and it won't be exactly 25% in each quadrant, but it will be darn near close. In fact, the last organization that I worked for, it was almost 25, 25, 25, 25, not exactly, but it was really, really close to that. I worked with one organization that was more creative based, and they had a lot of eyes in that organization. So they weren't as evenly spread as some other organizations might be. But if you have that larger organizations, and this is a SCORE webinar, so I'm going to assume there aren't a lot of large organizations on this call today. In fact, many of you are probably solopreneurs. One of the things that's great about taking the DiSC assessment as a solopreneur or a partnership or a very small organization is that it will still help you speak to your customers. In fact, the next section of today's webinar is going to build better relationships. So in building better relationships, this is the second part. So now you know a little bit more about who you are, where you fall in your style. The next part is building better relationships and using that knowledge and that understanding to stretch into some of those other styles. What you can do, or how you can do that, is you're going to need to read the other person. You need to look at body language, tone of voice and expression, choice of words. And sometimes you might be surprised. You might have a conversation with someone and they might say one thing, but their behaviors maybe say something else. I had a conversation with someone just today, and I was telling him about this webinar today. And after about 10 minutes, he asked, so where do I fall in this? Because people ask you, when you start talking about DiSC, people say, where do you think I fall? And I'll do the same thing. I'll ask people where they think where I might fall in the DiSC chart. And this person is more quiet, more reserved, has that quieter tone, that very people pleasing. And I said, I think you are an S, or that you fall into the SC style. And then I was reading off or sharing what those other styles kind of incorporate. And he said, well, that even though he was very introverted as a child, that he had to force himself to speak. And now he enjoys public speaking, and he enjoys being a little bit more out there and telling jokes to his daughter. I still think that if he took the DiSC assessment, he would fall into that SC, because he's still quiet, reserved. He really cares about other people, and he wants to make sure that everyone understands. He is an analytical person. So I'm pretty sure that he would fall in the SC. Doesn't mean he can't stretch into that more DI style that likes getting on stage and likes getting in front of other people to share their knowledge. But that SC style, I was able to detect that based on body language, tone of voice, choice of words that he used. And you will find that as you dive deeper and deeper into DiSC, and it can take years to do this, but the more that you use this tool, the more that you'll be able to read someone else. And as a partnership or solopreneur or a salesperson, it's really good to have this tool, to understand it as deeply as you can, so that you can read other people and again, stretch into those other zones. So the people reading method, we've already done that with you, but a quick review. So D for dominance, fast-paced, outspoken, questioning, and skeptical. The influence, fast-paced, so again, those two words are the fast-paced and outspoken at the top half, but you're more accepting, warm, empathetic. The bottom half, you've got the steadiness, which is cautious and reflective, but you're accepting and warm, kind of like the influence. You see, these words are very similar. And so each one of these four categories share a word with another category. Conscientiousness, you're cautious and reflective, just like the S is, but you're questioning and skeptical, just like the D is. So that should help you read other people. This next slide, I know there are a lot of words. It's very busy. Michelle, I will share this one with you as well, because I think this would make a great PDF. And it would be great to have something like this either on a whiteboard next to you or even on your desk in front of you as you're talking to people, and you start seeing some of these strengths that people have. And I'm calling this the spectrum of strengths. So again, they're not weaknesses. There's no wrong answers. You read some of these, speaking up about problems for a D, insisting on results. Those are very D-based. Versus the opposite end of the spectrum being a peacemaker or being there to support. Those are all good qualities to have. And the idea is that you want to stretch into those other qualities. So if you are interested in, and you insist on results, and someone on your team is more of that peacemaker and there to support, well, you need to learn how to communicate with that other style so that you can be heard. And rather than showing up like a bully, you can be more empathetic. Even though empathy isn't one of your traits, try to find that empathy when you have that conversation with that S style. So here's some tips. So now that you know what style you fit into, I see, again, a number of you have shared that, some of the tips that you have to work with those other styles. The D style tips, try to get to the point quickly. So if you're an I or an S, and you have a great idea and your boss is a D, some things that you want to do, get to the point quickly. Don't try to beat around the bush. You want to talk, you don't take abruptness personally. So that D style may come back at you and be a little gruff or may feel kind of bullying, but don't take it personally. That's really just a part of that person's style. Balance taking time and making progress, and speak up with opinions. If you've ever been in a meeting that is filled with Ds and you are not close to being a D, you know how hard it is to get a word in edgewise. What the D style needs to do is make a point of making sure that everyone is heard. So that would be the responsibility of the D, maybe the leader of that meeting, maybe the manager of that team. And that D needs to take the time to go around the room and make sure everyone in that room is heard, as opposed to allowing the Ds to just overrun and take over. And I have been in many meetings where that's what happens, is the only people that speak out are the D styles. So you want to make a point of being heard or making sure that everyone else is heard. If you are not an I style and you want to communicate with the I style, you want to make relationships a priority. So you're the C, maybe you're the opposite end of the spectrum. And you like to be by yourself. You don't really like relationships in general because you like to handle things on your own. Well, make a point of trying to build relationships. You also want to hear an I style out. They probably have great ideas. Let them finish. Balance showing support and questioning ideas. The I and the C might have some conflict because the I is like, let's go, let's do it. And the C has, well, wait a minute, have you thought about this? So the I also needs to pause and listen to the C, because sometimes you will find that the C will come up with questions that the I never even thought of. So the I will have great ideas. They're very innovative. They want to move forward. They want to take the company to the next level, which is all great. But what are some of the things, some of the risks that the I hadn't thought of that maybe the C can point out? So ask for time to think things out. If you are not an S and you're trying to communicate with an S, take a collaborative approach. They really love collaboration. They are the people-pleasing group. Check in and share updates. So you might need to ask how they're doing. They may not willingly share how they're doing because they're concerned with everybody else as opposed to themselves. So you might need to pause and say, hey, how are you doing? Consider how decisions will affect others. Again, they're very concerned about how every single decision is going to impact everyone else in the organization. And encourage them to take risks when needed. They are not risk takers. They're the opposite of risk takers because they want to make sure everything goes well and calm and moves at a normal, to them, a normal pace. So you might need to encourage them to take a risk. That might be the group that when you say, okay, it's okay to fail, try to allow them to fail, encourage them to take those risks. And the C style tips, if you're not a C, you might have to give background information and give them time to process. You might need to make clear fact-based arguments. They don't want I'll say the woo-woo. They don't want the fluff. They want the numbers. They want, just give me the facts, ma'am. All they want are the facts. You need to give them space. Again, they like to be by themselves. And don't take their reserve personally. So in all these cases, if you think someone is bullying you, okay, maybe they need to be pushed back a little bit, but that may just be part of their gruff D style. And they don't know yet that they haven't been taught what a D style is, and they don't understand that they need to stretch into your style. Same with a C. Don't take their reserve personally. If they want to be by themselves, that's just part of their behaviors. All right, now we're going to have a chance. So this is the interactive part again. And hopefully, Michelle, maybe put that invitation out one more time to be a panelist, because we are now going to look at a few videos. And what I'd like you to do is share with me what style you think the person in the video is. You ready?
All right, I went ahead and compared these two, and I've got some serious reservations. a lot of these plans look like they make sense, at least initially. But I spent some time going over them, and once you get past the surface, well, I found a number of problems. You know, I was actually in that meeting, and people there just weren't critically thinking. They were all caught up in Stephanie's energy, so I think we really need to go over this again, systematically, before we even think of committing.
All right, got a couple people that think it's a C. More than 4 people are participating as panelists, so we're just going to go with it. Yes, this person is a C. Why is this person a C? Just type in the chat. What stood out to you that made this person a C? Or giving C here, I'm giving not a C, a C tendency, an analytical, cautious, systemic, critical thinking. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Meticulous, systematic, perfect.
Okay, so you know how everyone is always saying they don't know what's going on, and the communication could be better? Well, what if we put out a video every week letting people know what's up? We'd keep it super fun, super informal, maybe do a few skits, have a few reoccurring characters. I know it sounds cheesy, but there are some big companies that do this and it goes over really well. And I mean, I don't mind being on camera, so I could host it and people from different divisions could show up when they've got something to share. What do you think? I mean, yeah, it'll be fun, but more than that, I think it'll work.
Super I, yes, I know. When I watched that video and knowing that Regina, like I said, we're friends and we're both I, we both fall in the I, and you watch this video and you think, is that really, does that seem like me? And yeah, it's a little bit of an exaggeration of an I, but I can see myself in that woman. I definitely can. I can get kind of energy filled. But it's kind of fun as you're reading somebody, and I will share that there are, and I don't have time today to go over many more videos, but when you dive even deeper, you start seeing videos of not just the I and the D or the 4 styles, but you see the 12 styles. So the DI or the IS, and you have to start thinking, okay, where does this person fall from that? And it can get a little bit complicated when you start doing that. All right.
You know what? This just isn't going to work. People are going to be frustrated. I'm going to be frustrated. We've got to figure out a way to do this more efficiently. We can't spend that much time waiting for every order to process. I want this done as much as the next person, but if I got to choose between hitting a deadline or efficiency, I'm going with efficiency.
Any other guesses? Definitely a D. A D. All right, last one.
Do you mind if we kind of go over this step by step just to make sure that I'm reading this right? Okay, because it looks like here we jump from this step all the way over to this step. Does that look right to you? Because to me, it looks like we could use some kind of system or structure or something, but I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I know Stephanie and Dante worked really hard putting this together and it looks so good. They did such a good job, but this one part, and well, maybe some others, you know, I think we might have rushed the process a little. And I mean, if it would help, I could go over it and I could make some notes, or I could sit down with them.
Rhonda, I love your face. That was your mother in that video, eh? Yeah, I think we can recognize as we go look at those videos, we could probably recognize a number of people in our lives that fall into some of those categories. And what's really important about that is not being able, because it's fun to try to read. It's definitely, that's probably, I'm going to say, the fun part of the process is trying to read someone. But the next step is really, what do you do with that information? what's the next step after, okay, so you know that you fall in that D or you fall in that I, and you're dealing with someone or working with and trying to communicate with someone that is different from you. How do you stretch into that? And that is where the full-blown DiSC assessment can help you. We went over that a little bit in those tips, and here's how to work with someone in that other style that falls in that other style. But if we go to the next style and we get into we get a little deeper into the assessment. So this was very high level in terms of the assessment. There are primarily two different assessments that we're going to talk about. There's actually more than that, but there are two. The one that we'll talk about is the workplace assessment. There are 23 pages of details. If you're in management, there's a separate one for managers. There's 27 pages for the managers. And I think I mentioned this earlier, if you have conflicting answers, it will result in more questions for you. So it'll dive even deeper. So if you answer something in one direction and you answer a similar question in a different way, the assessment tool will say, let's think about this for a minute. I'm going to ask some more questions to make sure I understand where you really fall. And I will, as a facilitator, I get another report that shows things that might be surprising. So maybe you landed in one style, but the way that you answered some of those questions could be very opposite from you, but you answered them strongly. And so, for example, if you are the opposite, so you fall in the I category, some things that might be surprising are if you're a perfectionist, or if you take time, or you're analytical. Those are going to be surprises for you, but that also means that it's probably easier for you to stretch into that other style. All right, so I mentioned the two. You've got workplace assessments. So that one is probably better for the solopreneur. So you want to know a little bit more about who you are, where you fall, and then how to work with your customers, your clients. This is going to be great if you're in the sales environment. Or coaching, consulting. If you're in one of those fields where you're all by yourself, or maybe you have a partner, but you work closely with a lot of clients, this is going to be a great tool for you to use, especially from a people reading, and how to stretch into those other styles so you can better communicate with those clients. Or individual contributors. If you are in a large organization and you have people that aren't managers, the workplace assessment is going to be for those folks. On the management side, obviously leaders, managers, partners, it's going to be a great place for you to be able to, from a delegation perspective or motivating others, this is going to be a great tool for you to do that. So you want to know when you decide or you order the assessment, again, whether you do it from me or from someone else, you need to know which one is better for you and which one is more appropriate. And sometimes organizations will say, well, we're going to start at the top. We'll have the C-suite do this. So many organizations, especially the medium size, let's say, excuse me, 100 people or so. I'm sorry, let me take a sip of water. You might start at the very top, the C-suite, and then you'll go down to that second level or first level manager, second level manager, and then have everyone take it. I'm working with an organization now that's doing that. They started at the top, and there's a good chance that they're going to move and give the assessment to everyone. But I may even do a lunch and learn similar to this to the organization, so people have at least a high level understanding of where they might fall in the DiSC chart and start working a little differently with others based on that knowledge. All right, this is going to be the workplace assessment, and this is the actual assessment that you will receive. So this is a sample. In this particular sample, the person's name is Mateo Vega. Mateo Vega is an SC. And the first 5 pages really go into who you are, your DiSC style, where your dot falls. There's a whole page that says your dot tells a story. So it gives a lot of information about you. And then there's an overview of DiSC. So everything that we just went over today, all of those words, that's going to be on page 5 of the assessment. Then how you work. This might be the most important part of really understanding what your motivators and strategy or stressors are. What I do in when you take the assessment, and if you bring me in to work through the assessments, because that's basically how this process works, is you order as an organization, you order the assessments for you and whoever else on the team needs to have them. And then you bring someone like me in to go over the assessments. One of the exercises that we do is I say, okay, look at the motivators and stressors. And I want you to take a few minutes to put a check mark by everything that you absolutely agree with. Put a question mark by the ones that you think, I don't know if this sounds like me or not. And then an X through the ones that you say, boy, this doesn't sound like me at all. And you probably won't be surprised to learn that there aren't very many X's, that there might be one or two. And again, those are going to be those surprises. And what you'll find though, is most people read this and say, wow, this sounds exactly like me. And then strategies for effectiveness, that last page there just shows how you can be a more effective person, how you can more effectively work with other people. Then we get into understand your relationships. So we did a little bit of this today where I gave you some tips on how to work with the other styles. So the D style in you, how you might react to the D style. So this particular person in Mateo is an SC. And as an SC, it's going to be a little bit opposite from the D, but you'll notice that he's action oriented. So even though he is an introvert and quiet, he is still action oriented. So that can still be very powerful as he tries to communicate with others or as others try to communicate with him. And so you'll have 4 pages very clearly laid out, very customized for you individually, that shares how you can better work with all of those other styles. And then building better relationships. This is just another to show also how you can connect better with those other styles. And you can see the little arrow. So this again is customized specifically for Mateo, who is an SC. And it shows, so for example, on the D, when you need to be more effective, when problems need to be solved, when things get tense. And it gives very clear information on how Mateo can better work and connect with a D style. And then the final 4 pages of the assessment are the personalized style index. And I actually blew up part of this so you could kind of see the DiSC style. So goals, and these are going to be what the DiSC style has with their goals and judges others by, influences other by, all those, that list. And then it clearly says Mateo. People with the DiSC style want to explore all options and make sure the best possible methods are used. So it gives, again, very clear examples of how Mateo can work with someone who has a DiSC style. And assuming that Mateo knows that this person has a DiSC style, can either do that based on the judgments that he's given or the assessment that he's done, or maybe there is a green dot. Maybe this person has on his nameplate or her nameplate that they are a DiSC, which makes it really easy for Mateo to communicate and work with that other style. All right, so that did not take the 90 minutes that I expected it to take. And I do have some time for questions. See, we are just shy of 1 o'clock, so this did not take as long as I thought it would. So I'd love to open it up for questions. What are some questions? If you can put those in the chat.
Or you can unmute yourself.
Or you can, oh, wonderful. You can unmute yourself. I'd love to hear from you. I will share, it's a little bit challenging to do this type of webinar because normally it's very interactive. These DiSC webinars, when I can do them live and in person, we have an opportunity to be a lot more interactive. We have more exercises. So the webinar is a little bit more of a challenge when I'm just talking to a screen. So if I could have a few more people maybe unmute themselves or put something in the chat, I would love to hear from you. Absolutely, Rhonda. If you want to, you've got my contact information there on the slide. I'd love to connect with each and every one of you. Send me an email, check out my website, connect with me on LinkedIn. Carolyn, how do we access the DiSC and take the test? That is something I can talk to you about. The workplace assessment is $90 and the management assessment is, I believe it's $130. And then depending on, and then of course we will work together on a package. So depending on how many you have, how many people you have, we'll work a package together because I would come in and do some facilitation that would be on top of the assessment cost. So if you have a large, really, if you want me to do it for 100 people, that cost is going to be very different than if I'm doing it for 2 or 3 people.
Got it. Yeah, it would just be for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I took this in high school, but that was like 40 years ago. So
Yeah, probably a good idea to do it again. And especially what field are you in, Carolyn?
I'm in the medical field, but I'm moving into the entrepreneurial space, into something that has nothing to do with medicine.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really interesting. I'd love to connect and hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, great.
All right, I've stopped the sharing so I can potentially see everyone that might turn their camera off.
And if Doris, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks.
What other questions? There's my beautiful friend, Regina. All right, I guess we're still recording, which is fine. Regina and I co-host a podcast. And so our podcast is called Leader-ish. And we have talked about the DiSC assessment on our podcast before, so I'm super excited. And Regina has taken the assessment and she does MBTI, which we exchanged. I did an MBTI with her and she did a DiSC assessment with me. So it was kind of interesting to see the difference between the two.
And Doris is an amazing practitioner. So if you are interested, sitting down with her and really going through all that information is very helpful to help you figure out where your strengths are. But as you're starting or growing your business, to figure out where you need to lean in and ask for support from others, crazy helpful.
Thank you, Regina.
You're welcome.
All right, Michelle, I know we said that we're going to go 90 minutes, but we were able to get it all done in basically an hour. But I would, as I said, love to connect with each and every one of you. If you wouldn't mind reaching out to me on LinkedIn and via email. I thank you all for participating today, and hopefully I will see you all again at another SCORE event or another networking event in Nashville. I think Regina and I attend a lot of those.
Well, thank you so much, Doris. So much information. It's a lot of it we can use immediately. So you did a great job of going into detail. And I know a lot of people would like to take the assessment themselves to really find out where their strengths are.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time. For those of you still on the call, do not forget to go to the Nashville chapter website for SCORE, and that's score.org/Nashville. And when you click on Take a Workshop, all of our events will be listed there. And it is updated on a regular basis. Not only that, you get emails. You probably get a bazillion emails right now. So please don't opt out, just delete, because one of those may strike your fancy like this one did. So we are here to help you on your entrepreneurial goals and path. And we bring in great speakers like Doris that hopefully add value to your lives. So any other closing comments, Doris?
No, I think that was a wonderful way to close, Michelle. Thank you so very much.
And thank you. Everyone, have a great rest of your day and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.